In this edition of Southern Newsweek, an uncertain future for students, Aoraki Polytechnic's Dunedin campus could be closing. Conservation is the name of the game, with city dwellers being encouraged to engage with nature, and residents express their concern over quarry operations. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. Students at the local Aoraki Polytechnic campus are anxious about the future of their studies. The institution is considering a merger which could see the Dunedin campus closed, but there may be a silver lining.
Staff and students at the local Aoraki Polytechnic campus are in limbo as the Timaru-based organisation considers a merger with CPIT in Christchurch. That could mean the Dunedin campus is closed, and its students may be picked up by Otago Polytechnic, as explained by the National President of the New Zealand Union of Students' Associations from Wellington.
Seems like the local polytech here in Dunedin will take on those students, but they are concerned about the type of course that they're doing won't be offered the way it is, and they might lose some of the culture that's built up at Aoraki in Dunedin. Yeah.
McCourt's worried about the lack of student representation at Aoraki, which doesn't have a students' association. He's working to help establish one so students' rights are upheld if the merger goes ahead. And he says the transfer of courses to Otago Polytechnic would be welcomed by the union as well as those affected.
There aren't too many students in the scheme of Aoraki, and certainly not in the grand scheme of Otago Polytech, so it should be fairly easy to transfer those students. And look, some of them are really looking forward to coming over to Otago Polytech. The photography students, for example, are looking forward to use of the dark room over at OP. So it's not all bad. We just want to make sure that these courses that are very special continue in the way that they are.
Aoraki's Dunedin campus has 160 full-time equivalent students and 14 full-time staff. It offers courses in journalism, film, photography, beauty, massage, hairdressing and early childhood study. And McCourt says the Polytechnic is one of many regional institutions suffering from inadequate funding.
Undoubtedly, the mergers are being driven by the financial constraints that are being put on regional polytechs in particular by the government.
Aoraki is yet to make a decision on the merger, and Otago Polytechnic's waiting in the wings for an outcome, as are students and staff. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
A proposal to build a new swimming pool in Mosgill's Memorial Gardens has some residents riled up. It's one of the 4 sites being considered for the multi-million-dollar aquatic complex, and the newly formed group is vowing to fight to save the town's remaining green space.
Rallying to save Mosgill's remaining green space. This group of Tyree residents oppose the use of Memorial Gardens for a new pool complex. The site's one of several being considered, as well as the existing pool location. And Chairman Brian Miller says this group is quickly gaining momentum.
We've only been going a week and I've had over 30 odd people contact me, and we formed the group, and the group's had people contacting them, and so it is really quite a groundswell, and it's of all ages as well. 2 other locations within Memorial Park are also being considered. Miller says the Hands-Off Memorial Gardens group isn't against the proposal for a new pool, just the proposal to build it within the gardens. It's an area that's been put together by the people of Mosgill and the Tyree about 50 or 60 years ago. It wasn't built by council staff, it was done with donations and that by local people, and we want to preserve that. It's last of the sort of the green areas that we've got in Mosgill. Miller says if the pool's housed within the gardens, it'll be the latest example of green space forfeiture in favour of commercial development on the Tyree. And he says those decisions stem from inadequate consultation between the area's elected representatives and the public. Our community board has let us down completely. They are supporting this site, this preference, and as an elected board, they have not gone to the public and asked the public what they thought about this particular site. The Hands-Off Memorial Gardens group has just a few days to rally additional support, with the Dunedin City Council accepting public submissions on the pool's site selection until the end of the week. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
Dunedin's urban residents are being encouraged to engage with nature through a new conservation campaign. Information panels are springing up around the city as part of the Department of Conservation project, and staff say the benefits are far more than just educational.
Department of Conservation staff are turning their focus to Dunedin's urban environment, installing a number of new informative signs in an effort to connect the city's urban population to nature. The panels are a collaboration between Partnerships Ranger Craig Wilson and the Otago Museum, aimed at increasing the public's awareness of their immediate environment.
We know that people living in cities, they often become a bit disconnected from nature. They don't feel like they're really a part of it, but we're trying to show people that even when they're in the urban centre of Dunedin, there's still nature all around them.
Wilson says increasingly people are becoming disengaged with nature and therefore less interested in protecting it. And he says that's what the Urban Nature Project aims to counteract, helping ensure the public gets behind conservation efforts while also improving their own lives.
The rates of, for example, depression, mental illnesses and I guess physical illnesses from a lack of activity, they do tend to go up. And so if we can get people to feel like they're more part of their environment and feel more connected to what's around them, then it should also be helping people's well-being.
So far, 3 panels have been installed along Portsmouth Drive for the pilot phase of the campaign. Wilson says as time goes on, panels will change seasonally to showcase relevant environmental information throughout the year. In long term, there's plans to grow the project within the city.
We're hoping that this will go well and we'll learn a bit from it, and then the plan is to maybe pick up to 30 sites around the city where we can have these panels that point out different species and different seasonal changes and try to get people more aware of what's happening and thinking more about what's happening in nature around them.
He says after the pilot phase, additional panels will be installed in other high foot traffic areas, including Woodhall Gardens and the town belt. And while for now the campaign is a local one, Wilson hopes other urban centres will take a leaf out of Dunedin's book and do something similar. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
An investigation is underway to determine the cause of a fire at a central city pub. The fire is believed to have started in an office above the pub on the corner of George and London Streets. Patrons were evacuated when an alarm was triggered by the blaze. No one was injured and firefighters managed to extinguish the fire within half an hour. The first floor office within the building was gutted and other parts of the building were water damaged. That includes the bar and kitchen. Arson hasn't been ruled out in relation to the incident. The environmental impact of a local quarry is getting Portobello residents riled up. A 2-day application hearing for a resource consent variation is underway at the City Council, and it highlights concerns from residents most affected by the operation.
Answering to the controversy, the operator of a Portobello quarry fronts up for a resource consent hearing. Neighbours and council staff are concerned he's operating outside the scope of his existing consent, granted in 2006, and that it's having an impact on the peninsula.
So what's happened is the applicant has gone beyond the extent of the quarry and gone higher and increased the height of fill taken from the site, so it's creating adverse landscape effects.
Quarry operator Steve Clearwater says the 2006 consent was vague in parts, and he believes that's led to some confusion over what he is and isn't allowed to do.
The GPS coordinates were the main one. Never checked or surveyor did them or anything like that. A handheld was accepted, and we've been working to those points, and that's our key things.
Clearwater says there are numerous reasons quarries are needed in New Zealand, and he wants that to be acknowledged and accepted. But several Portobello residents are calling for the resource consent variation to be declined, and some even want to see the operation closed down. One resident says he's fine with the quarry staying open, as long as consent conditions are adhered to.
Unfortunately, where we've ended up now, it's far from that position. The quarry's outside its boundaries in a major manner. The sound levels breach the levels on a regular basis. Sounds a little like a freight train. We have to raise our voice on our front lawn to speak.
The hearing will pick up again in the morning, when there's likely to be further debate as council planners and locals air their concerns over potentially unpermitted activity. David DeLorean, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, the right to breastfeed in public gathers more support, and fundraising for the children's ward, how supermarket staff are helping raise money for Dunedin Hospital. Welcome back. Dunedin mothers say there's increasing support for public breastfeeding throughout the city. More than 40 women gathered recently at a local mall to publicly nurse their babies, and they're highlighting some of the lesser-known benefits.
Supporting mothers nationwide, 44 Dunedin mums assemble at a local mall to breastfeed. They are participating in the Big Latch On, a global event to celebrate and normalise natural nursing.
We do it in public so that we can normalise breastfeeding amongst the population and also give women confidence to come out of their homes and breastfeed.
Organisers are pleased to see a high turnout at this year's event. They say there's been a stigma surrounding breastfeeding in the past, but the situation's improving. And that's translating to much more support for mothers in the workplace and in public. A plus for the little ones too.
It's nice bonding time between me and him, and yeah, it's just lovely really, I suppose.
This event's one of many happening throughout the region as part of World Breastfeeding Week. Quested encourages local employers to talk to and support staff who breastfeed, and she hopes to promote the myriad of benefits it offers.
Protects children against infectious diseases, but it also protects children against obesity and other related non-communicable diseases as well.
Research shows breastfeeding helps to prevent cancer, and it's also better for the environment than artificial alternatives. All the more reason to celebrate and spread the message in public. Jack Conroy, 39 Dunedin News.
Residents are getting an insight into the scientific world through the eyes of children. School pupils' research displays are being set up at a local museum for an annual science fair, and the event is already proving to be informative.
When you're among hundreds of science projects, it's not easy to stand out. But Fairfield school pupil Isabel Daly has done it. Her homemade hydraulic arm is among the projects catching people's attention at this year's Aurora Otago Science and Technology Fair. The machine uses syringes and water to move different parts of the arm, and it's taught this inquisitive youngster a ton.
Hydraulics is used lots, it's used in like cranes and lifts and stuff, machinery.
The Science and Technology Fair is running for the next week, with the doors opening to the public from Wednesday. Judging is underway, with pupils being interviewed about what they've researched and why. The projects will be looked over later on as well. The fair's convener says they've attracted some exceptionally interesting projects this year.
The ones that stand out are the ones where they've done it because it's an interest to them, or they've basically seen something that they want to find out more about, or they just asked a question and find out what's the answer.
Sexton says this event is often a pathway into further science programs, and lots of the teens who put projects in here end up studying at Otago University. That knowledge makes this year's support even more special.
This is the highest number we've had of senior entries this year for probably a good decade. Year 7 and 8 tend to do it as part of the school projects for science. Anyone who's doing year 9, 10 and above is doing this in addition to schoolwork. So these are students who are doing it on top of everything else.
With more than 24 schools from across the region taking part in the fair, judges have their work cut out for them. They'll be picking out the best of the best, ahead of a formal prize giving on Sunday. But no matter who comes out on top, local minds have just become a bit more inquisitive, thanks to this decades-old annual science fair. David DeLorean, 39 Dunedin News.
A new environmental program is giving local pupils a closer look at their surroundings. Trackers are being put in place around schools to record wildlife, and the initiative allows children to interact with some top scientific minds.
Getting up close with nature. St Leonard's school pupils investigate one of the new trackers installed on the grounds. They've been put in place to monitor the school's wildlife as part of a new backyard biodiversity program. And the installations already got kids learning about the creatures that live around their classrooms.
We had a bit of an introduction to biodiversity, learned a bit about introduced species and native species and what impact our introduced species have on our native species.
An assembly's been held at the school to explain backyard biodiversity to the children. Those involved with the project hope it'll get pupils thinking about pests, native species and the environment. There's even potential for kids to talk to scientists on the internet about what their trackers find.
They can take a photograph of what they found. If they're not sure of what it was, they can upload that and go, what is this? Can someone help us? And so they can have some interaction with scientists as well, sort of saying, okay, this is this or this is that. So it just extends that out a lot further for these children.
St Leonard's was the first of 18 participating local schools to have the trackers in place. There's several different types, tailored for a variety of animals and bugs. Kids will be monitoring the equipment every few weeks and analysing what they find. It's hoped that'll spark a passion for science and open their eyes to the wider world.
Studies have shown that that we haven't been great with our children to get them to just stop and observe, and so this is a great way to actually get them to do that. Just stop and look and say, what's in our backyard? And so not only can they use their eyes and their ears, but they can actually use these scientific models.
The government-funded tracker program will run until the end of the year, but there's potential for it to be extended. With the kids getting to keep the kits, there's high hopes it'll fuel their curiosity and get them a bit closer to the creatures that live nearby. David DeLorean, 39 Dunedin News.
Local supermarket staff are throwing their energy into a Dunedin hospital fundraiser. The annual Countdown Kids Hospital appeal has been supporting child healthcare for almost a decade, and staff involved hope this year's effort is more lucrative than ever.
Hospital equipment doesn't come cheap, and in Dunedin that often prompts applications for funding. One regular source of financial assistance is the annual Countdown Kids Hospital appeal. The supermarket chain works with hospitals nationwide to assess demand for children's medical care before staff set about raising the required funds.
We support 11 hospitals throughout New Zealand, and what we do is we get together, we work out ideas to fundraise, and with the help of our customers in store, we go to and try and get as much money as we possibly can.
Over the past 8 years, the appeal has raised nearly $1 million for the children's ward in Dunedin. That's part of the $8.3 million raised nationwide. And McNaught says it's all gone towards equipping hospitals and enhancing families' experiences.
The money mostly goes towards equipment and fun equipment. So, you know, we've done things as far as IVs, you know, with little monkeys on them, things that just make it better for the kids.
And it's that specialised equipment that's helped countless local children and families feel comfortable at the hospital, some of whom have become local appeal champions.
Our baby was born really, really early, and she spent 4.5 months in hospital, and it meant that we could be here in Dunedin with her. We didn't have to go away to other hospitals, other places away from our family. We could just stay here. We've got big kids as well, so they were settled, and it just helped on us so much to be here in Dunedin.
This year, Countdown hopes to top last year's final figure of $1.3 million. A chunk of which Dunedin Hospital will use to ensure children's medical needs are catered to. Ruby McAndrew, 39 Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, we hear about a project having a significant impact on local musicians. And an increasing number of nighttime adventure seekers are hitting the streets of Dunedin. Welcome back. Young local musicians are immersing themselves in the modern Dunedin sound. They're involved in a project run by the Dunedin Fringe Arts Trust, which is having a significant impact.
Getting amped. High school musicians learn the tools of the trade at this music workshop. Dozens of youth are taking part in the Amped Music Project, learning what it takes to be a successful musician from established Dunedin artists.
There's nothing else like this for these kids. You know, so if they play rugby, there's a lot that they have access to, but if they're into music, maybe not so much, so it's really important that it exists, I think.
Sinnott says there's widespread support for the project from local musicians, with many of them putting their hands up to be involved as mentors. Even those that don't have the time are supporting the project in other ways. The young musicians involved say meeting some of the local industry veterans is a great experience, which gets their foot in the door of the modern Dunedin music scene.
What I want to get out of this is, meeting bands
like I said before, just to have gigs within the future, and also knowing places of like where we can have gigs.
The program runs for 10 weeks and is made up of workshops and all ages gigs. Sinnott says these teens are genuinely talented young musicians, so the experience is invaluable in nurturing their fledgling careers, and it's making all the difference for some.
There was young guy you've probably heard of, Jake Cropley, did the Amped project before, and he's doing really well now. He's very popular and he's doing a lot of great gigs. So yeah, there's definite successes coming out.
The annual music project's dependent on funding and has struggled in the past, but Sinnott hopes to keep it running, all to give young local musos the boost they need to turn their potential careers up to 11. David DeLorean, 39 Dunedin News.
For the second consecutive year, Pirates are the victors in the local Women's Premier Club Rugby competition. The side beat University 31 points to 13. And for the undefeated Pirates, it's a perfect end to a perfect season.
In what's becoming a familiar scene, a joyous Pirates Premier side celebrates a convincing final win over University in the Metropolitan Women's Contest. It's the second year in a row they've claimed victory, but Captain Angie Sesifar says getting the win wasn't easy, with the varsity team putting up a fight.
They challenged us up front and out wide, and we had to do a lot of adjusting during the game, especially with their defence. But we picked up on that, and we were able to play to their weaknesses, which I'm proud of our girls for doing, but they really challenged us. I think they did their homework, and that's good.
The Pirates side started strong, dominating possession throughout the first 40 minutes, scoring 21 points while conceding only 3 points to varsity. And University captain Megan Manson says while they began to bounce back in the second half, it was just a little too late.
You can't start slow against a team like Pirates. They're just foot down from the very first whistle, and yeah, we didn't help ourselves in that respect.
Despite the loss, Manson says University's had a great season, with the team suffering only a couple of defeats on the way to the final. And she says it goes to show the strength of Dunedin's female sides in what's traditionally a male-dominated sport.
There's no reason to say that we're less competitive. It's, yeah, in the end it's still about your club, it's about your teammates and the pride of it. So, yeah, just as competitive.
And while these teams are at the top of their game, Sesefar's advice for young players is to not take it too seriously, instead focusing on enjoying the sport.
You know, when you first start out, just have fun. Don't get serious till later on, club season and that, but just keep trying, keep pushing on.
Now the season's over, it's time to celebrate, but any rest might be short-lived for both teams, with call-ups likely for Otago Spirit competing in the Women's National Provincial Championship later this year. Ruby McAndrew, 39 Dunedin News.
And finally, adventure seekers are taking to the streets after dark to pursue their passion. Members of the Longboard Society of Dunedin say more locals are getting involved in the sport. And contrary to popular belief, they're committed to doing what they love in the safest possible way.
An increasing number of people are getting around on a completely different set of wheels, with skating increasingly being recognised as a viable mode of transport within the city. And those involved in a local longboarding society say there's something for everyone.
We have everything from park skating, which happens at the train station, through to the people that just use it for transport, all the way to us as longboarders who do downhill and freeride. And yeah, there was a good, huge number of people that do it.
The current bylaw insists skating must be done on the road, so safety among traffic can be an issue. That prompts members to indulge their passion at night, when cars are few and far between.
We do a thing called night runs, and that's purely because the roads we like to skate are very busy during the day, so skate them at night, less cars, less traffic. Most people are generally pretty good with us, so as long as we're seen, it's usually been fine.
He says the potential for conflict between skateboarders and other road users is reduced by skating after dark, with the space that cars, cyclists and pedestrians usually compete for being basically empty.
You don't want to do it when it's busy. It's a risk management thing. We're already doing a dangerous sport, so why would you throw yourself in front of a whole lot of cars when you don't have to? Just as long as you wear the right gear and be respectful, most people are pretty happy to have you come back, week upon week, and that's just the way we like to keep it.
The society typically gains 10 to 20 new members each week, prompting weekly skate clinics for beginners to cover safety basics. all in an effort to ensure the reputation of the city's skaters is a good one. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Please do visit our website, dunedintv.co.nz, where you can download Southern Newsweek and watch individual clips of 39 Dunedin News or webcast the show. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.